So I've just got back from work and I actually had an interview today at my apprenticeship. So I got a few ideas in my head that I thought I'd share with you, which will help you when you come to doing your interviews. So a couple of weeks ago, within the early careers community at my company, they advertised a role which was an apprentice lead for learning and development. The learning and development lead basically runs programs, does all sorts of things to basically support the learning and development for new early careers, so graduates, apprentices and industrial placements. So when this came up, I actually didn't find out about it until an hour until the deadline. So I quickly got an application in, sent through the word questions, and then last week they came back saying I was successful to get to the next stage, and I had my interview today. So this role, I'm not really too worried about, to be honest. The main reason I applied was just to get some interview practice, because I think even once you have a job, you never know when you're going to need to perform well in an interview in the future. So it's just a skill to keep ticking over. So this role, I'm not really too worried about. I don't really care if I get it, if I don't get it. If I get it, it'd be nice, extra responsibility, more things to do. But if I don't get it, it's not the end of the world. I just wanted to have this interview practice. So I just want to talk about what the kind of preparations you do on the morning of an interview or an assessment centre. And this is where I want to bring something in that I read from, it's in Atomic Habits by James Clear, and also The Gladiator Mindset by Adam Peaty. And that is something called a ritual that will help you. And what do I mean by ritual? So when I was doing my interview today, I had a lot of work. I actually had to submit some CAD work by the end of the day, so I didn't have loads of time to prepare. In fact, I was only setting up my laptop in the room and getting ready with about 10 minutes to spare before the interview started, which in the scale of things is absolutely nothing. All right, so I just wanted to talk about what's the sort of ritual that I employed when I was doing my interviews, and what can you do. And the reason a ritual is important is because it's explained in these books, Atomic Habits and The Gladiator Mindset, that once you do a ritual over and over again for the same activity, it starts to get your body automatically prepared for it. Now that probably doesn't mean anything. Let me just give you an example. So swimmers, before they do a race, they all have a certain warm-up that they do. Maybe they'll do 10 press-ups, then 5 squat jumps, then they'll swing their arms this way, then they'll go up onto the block and look into the water, then they'll do their goggles at this certain point. Everyone has a different ritual. I've got my own ritual for when I'm swimming that I do every single time. And what this does is it tells your body that it is time to perform in the swimming race. Doing that ritual literally psychologically activates inside you the processes that get your heart firing, get your muscles pumping, getting you ready to perform. And this can be applied to an interview. So if you do the same ritual before an interview every single time, then what it's going to do is, over time, it's going to start telling your body that when you're doing this ritual, you need to get your body prepared for the interview. And obviously it's not a physical thing, but it applies mentally. So it will get your brain sharp, it'll get you focused, and it's going to get you to something called flow state. Flow state is a state you can get in when you completely forget about time, you don't have any other thoughts, and you just perform whatever you need to perform to the best of your ability. So when athletes are doing their races, their swimming races or their running races or whatever it is, they're going to be in a flow state, completely no thoughts about anything else, not feeling time at all. They're in flow basically. And this is what you can get to in an interview. And I found that when I was applying for apprenticeships and I was doing a bunch of assessment centres, I would get in flow state during the interviews. And this is something I noticed today. It was a half-an-hour interview and it absolutely flew past. I checked the clock at one point and it was already 25 past, and it felt like 5 minutes had gone. So if you can get yourself into flow state, that is going to get you basically on your top game. Like, flow state is when you're on the top notch of your game. You're at your best ability. So here's an actionable step for you. I want you to create a ritual which will help you get into flow state for that interview. Now, if you're not sure what sort of ritual I'm talking about, then let me give you an example of my ritual that I usually use to get prepared for an interview. I didn't do it today because I didn't have time, but this was normally my ritual for an assessment centre. So about an hour before, I would get everything logged on, get everything ready. Then I would spend about 15 minutes doing some more research on the company, writing that down in my notebook. Then I'd go off and have breakfast, and then I'd come back maybe 20 or 30 minutes before the thing started. I would go over my presentation. So if it was a 10-minute presentation, I'd do a full run through and I would get it on the dot, 10 minutes, which is something you need to do, by the way. You need to be on the dot with your presentations. I would then read through my cover letter, read through my application questions. I would then read through the research I'd done on the company, read through the CV. We then get to about 2 minutes until it starts. I would then play the same song, which is like a sort of ritual song that got me in the mood for it. I would play a song so that it finished on the dot, on 00, and then I'd join the Teams meeting, and by that point, I'm completely in flow, ready to perform at the best of my ability in this interview. Okay, so that's a sort of ritual you can employ rather than just turning up 2 minutes before and just whatever. Have a nice long preparation ritual. Mine was an hour long. So that's the first thing I was thinking about today, is about the ritual and getting into flow state. Now, the second thing I wanted to mention was getting rapport with your interview. This is genuinely, I think, the cheat code for succeeding in interviews and passing interviews, is getting good rapport, getting on good terms with your interviewer, because an interview is a breeze. Once you have the interviewer on your side, they want you to do well. They're literally giving you opportunities to do well, because when they're on your side and they're being really friendly, they'll literally add extra things in for you. They'll give you extra opportunities to speak. Whereas if you don't have rapport, for example, I've had to be honest, it's probably only been one. In all the apprenticeships I applied to and the assessment centres and interviews I had, I reckon I only had one. I'm not going to name the company because I'm not trying to get sued or anything, but I probably had one interview that was hostile. Like, the interviewer was hostile, and that was a difficult interview, and it just made everything so much harder just because of that one aspect. Like, it's the same questions they're asking you, but just being on the same side as the interviewer, it just makes it so much easier. And then second of all, they're going to mark you higher. It's just psychology. If it's all like a bit hostile, they're naturally going to mark you lower than they would if you were basically best mates as you're doing it. This is basically the second thing you want to think about when you're going into interview. Just try and get some rapport with the interviewer. So when you join the meeting, you can ask them how they are, have a bit of chat. They'll say something back at you, and then you want to sort of delay the start of the interview for 5 minutes. If you can do that, that's a complete success. If you can delay the start of the interview by 5 minutes, that's what you want. You're literally just having a conversation, and then they're like, right, let's get started now, as opposed to like you go in the interview and they straight away just ask you the first question. So the second thing I want you to just think about is, see if you can make rapport, get a good relationship with the interviewer, make some jokes, whatever, laugh, ask them about their lives or whatever. They'll ask you about yours, and then it's just going to make it easier for everyone. For example, a trick I used to do, you can do this if you want, is I'd always put a music stand in the back of my camera when I was doing interviews. And then one time some guy actually commented, said, "Oh, is that a music stand? What instrument do you play?" And I said, "I play the trumpet." And then I asked him if he does any music instruments, and then it turns out he played the trumpet. And then we were just talking about that for a couple of minutes, and then actually start the interview. And then everyone's happy, everyone's comfortable. It's a much better interview. And similarly, I had another interview where I think the clocks had just changed and the clock behind me was wrong, and the guy made a joke about that, and then he referenced it at the end. And then it's like, that's a really good thing. If you can get rapport with your interviewer, which I did today, we were just chatting for 5 minutes, and even just through the whole thing it was all just light-hearted and all good, then instantly you're going to get a better mark and you're more likely to get that job. So there you go. Those are just 2 ideas that I thought I'd share with you today. First of all, set up a ritual which gives you lots of time, lots of good preparation, and a ritual that you follow every single time before you do an interview, because that's going to get you in flow state for that interview, and you're going to be better and better and better. It's going to feel so easy. Genuinely, when I'm not in flow state, like, interviews can be jarring, right? But when you're in flow state, the interviews just completely breeze past. And then added on top of that, if you have rapport with the interviewer, then it's absolutely amazing. So there you go. There's your 2 actionable steps. I want you to make a ritual so that you can get in flow state for these interviews. And then in the interviews, whilst you're in flow state, add on top of that good rapport with the interviewer, and you're all home and dry, and it's a job. Okay, so I hope this has helped. This has been a different kind of video. I just had this idea today during my interview just to share a few ideas. If you want just some spontaneous videos like this, and if this video has given you value, then leave a like down below so that I know this helps, and subscribe to the channel for future videos. Have a good rest of your day. Thanks very much.